That's 200,000 people more. Statistically, 3.2 people, I don't know what a 0.2 person is, equates to another housing unit. That can be a single family or an apartment or a condo. Okay? This is how the numbers are based and how we learn to project what we need for building here. Okay? What if it only increased to 0.5%? Now we've increased almost 500,000 people. 500? Am I right there? No, I'm sorry. About 300,000 people, just by 0.5% of growth. Okay? Can you see why our city planners, they've actually done a good job, because that's what they do, is work with these projections. Okay? And it's not just projections. Here's the what if. If we bring in this company that brings in 1,000 new jobs, right? We're going to need X amount. Our population's going to grow by this. Somebody smarter than me figures out how many of that's going to come from local. Those 1,000 jobs will be employed by local people or from people that move here. So the people that move here, when they plan for that, they need to figure out that we have enough housing here. Currently on the MLS, we have less than a month's supply of housing. A normal market is 2.5 months of supply of housing. Okay? So let's look at the economic overview for Phoenix. Our unemployment rate in Phoenix currently is about 5.5%. And again, we kind of talked about here earlier, do you want to employ that 5%? Maybe, maybe not. Maybe they're not skilled enough. Maybe they're whatever. Okay? And that's with a job growth of 3.17%. But we expect our future job growth over the next 10 years to be predicted at about 40%. Okay? Now that's not 40% a year, that's 40% over the next 10 years. So, that's increasing a lot of jobs here. Okay? Our taxes currently, we have a sales tax rate of 8.6% and an income tax rate of 3.36%. Okay? However, we can balance that. Our property taxes in Maricopa County are much lower than if you go to Florida, Texas, California, some of the other large markets. People sometimes are very surprised with us. Our income per capita is only $24,000, but in this number, they included all the kids. That's the entire population. So kids that are 6 years old are making $24,000. I'm going to put my grandchildren to work right away. So our job growth here was 4.7% last year, and other jobs started looking here as a good, friendly place to put jobs here, companies. Kiplinger, I can't say it right, okay, has ranked Arizona for this coming year, as well as last year, as the second fastest projected job growth in the country. We go back to job growth means people, means investments. Only Idaho was higher with 3.5%. Realtor.com puts us number 1. Okay. So there's many types of assets that we can talk about here. We're going to kind of get off the population now and the economic. I think I've drilled it into your head that we do have growth. We're slow and steady, which I think is a much smarter way to grow an economy. Okay. There's many types of real estate assets. Depending on the investor, you the investor, and where you want to invest in, depends on which market you really want to study. Tenant-occupied single-family homes. I am not talking about owner-occupied when I talk about this. I'm talking about single-family, where you rent the house to a tenant. Why would you do that? Fourplexes, I put those in its own category, although it's kind of a hybrid. It kind of falls between single-family and multifamily. And the reason being is because it's actually a more stable tenant population. People think of them more as a home versus an apartment, typically, not always, but sometimes. The other thing is, on the fourplex market, as you all know, I've sold well over 2,500 fourplexes in the Phoenix market over the last 20 years. And it's a market that people come to me to ask what's going on versus me going someplace else. Apartment buildings, I'm kind of talking about mid-size apartment buildings, under 100 units. We're going to talk a little bit about assisted care, 10 beds or under. And the reason we're talking 10 beds or under, because we're not going institutional on our today's webinar. Triple net, a lot of people don't know what triple net is. Triple net is like you own the Jack in the Box, and the Jack in the Box owner rents it from you. Starbucks rents it from you. You own the property, they pay all of the expenses on the property. This is truly passive investment. So let's start with single family houses and condos, and I've kind of grouped them both together because they really are about the same. Okay? So we want to explore why people are out of the housing market. Why are they not buying property? We talked about it before. I'm sorry, I just had a text come through. We talked about it before as far as negative equity. Okay? They may owe more on their property than what they can sell it for still, and therefore they're not selling, which means they're not moving. Okay? Foreclosures, we still have foreclosures, we still have short sales. The millennials, which we're going to talk about in a few minutes, student loans are actually keeping a number of people out of the buying housing market. Okay? We all know that we have tougher loan standards. I think we can all agree with that. Tougher loan standards means it's harder to qualify to buy a house. People that may have great credit scores may have too high of a DTI, therefore they can't qualify. Okay? I have a client right now with an 800 credit score. We're worried about qualifying with him because his DTI is high. Perfect credit. And fear. There's a lot of people, maybe you're one of them, that are afraid to go buy a house to live in because they're afraid the market's going to crash again. So fear is keeping people from buying single family. So here's some positives that affect housing permits, and I'm talking about building, because again, maybe people want to buy, but they can't find what they want, and it's because it hasn't been built yet. So we're going to talk a little bit about housing permits. Here's some positive, and they're kind of unforeseen. More jobs, which I've already beat to death here. It grows and it leads to higher population, and that flows to Arizona. It speeds us up. And the millennials. Millennials are actually a positive and a negative to the housing market. We're going to talk about them. So if you just sit here and say, I believe, let's not go to the 2.5 that we worked on some projections, let's just stay at 2%. This implies an average of about 33,000 single-family permits over the next 10 years. That means that we have to build 33,000 single families in the Phoenix area, in Arizona, primarily the Phoenix area, in order to keep up just with a 2% population growth. What if we go to 2.25? What if we go to 2.50, which our city planners want us to do? Okay? Do you think maybe that number is going to increase? You bet it will. Okay? Let's talk about the millennials. I have nothing against millennials, but let's talk about them. Okay? So, the U.S. Census Bureau states from 1985 to 2005, which is the birth area for the millennials, 2004, I'm sorry, there were about 79 million millennials born in the United States. 79 million. Okay? That's approximately 100,000 more than the baby boomer generation, which is me, which means we have these coming into adulthood, renting apartments. We're going to talk about it, what year we can plan for them to rent apartments. In fact, it's already here. But as we go forward and we go into retirement and senior housing, there's more. Right now the baby boomers are filling senior housing, and guess what? We've got more coming. Okay? So here's the percentage of 18 to 33-year-olds, which are the millennials right now, during each generation. But how many of them got married? And marriage, believe it or not, is better for the economy. So, in the silent generation, okay, people that were born in 1960 to 64, 1960, I'm sorry, 64% were married, okay? Between 18 and 33. So when they were 18 years old to 33, 64% of them got married. In 1980, which are the baby boomers, okay, from 18 years age-wise, 18 to 33, only 49% got married. Big difference. Generation X, and I'm sorry there should be a 1 in front of that, 1997, my mistake, only 38% got married during that time period, that age period. In 2014, only 28% of millennials got married. Okay? So here's what happens. When you delay marriage, statistically, and I know some people don't get married to have kids, but when you delay marriage, you delay children having kids. By the way, I'm going to be a grandmother for the first time this year, so I'm pretty excited about that. I'm going to tell everybody. But it delays housing, and when that delay happens for housing, it delays housing stuff. That's what we talked about before, right? Gas, cars, curtains, groceries, all of that stuff, okay? Here's another thing that you need to understand is that student loan debt in the United States has quadrupled. That's huge. Okay? So here's what I wanted to put on here, and there was a lot of information to put on this slide, is what delayed people saving for a down payment in 2015 by age for the reasons. So student loans, all buyers, over half of the population that wanted to save for homes did not, and they didn't because of student loans. Okay, 35 years and under, obviously the largest part of that 51%. So you take the 51, and that's where that percentage was 35 years and under. It drops down 35 to 50, 51 to 60, 61 to 69, and I don't understand 70 to 90 with student loans, but apparently there are some out there. Credit card debt, okay? You can see credit card debt stays there pretty much through all the age brackets, the highest being the younger people. Okay, I'm sorry, 35 to 50, my mistake. Car loans, okay? 35% of the people that would save aren't doing it because of their car loan. Cars are expensive. We come back to what I talked about with Trump, bringing, penalizing for manufacturers manufacturing out of the country. If you've listened to the news, Ford's coming back, okay? Ford's not American made these days. But if you bring Ford back to the country, possibly the price of cars will come down, maybe, because they're going to have tax incentives to do that. Therefore, maybe your car loans go down because your prices come down, or at least don't keep going up. Childcare. Childcare is a problem. Certainly this goes down as people go older because they don't have children to put in childcare, but childcare is expensive. Healthcare. You know, healthcare stays stable pretty much all the way through the age brackets. Healthcare is expensive. We know something's going to be addressed there. We don't know what. Other, that's just miscellaneous of expenses. And here's the median years that they delayed buying. Okay? 3 years, average. As you go older, it gets more that they've delayed. It gets up to 6 years in 61 to 69, delayed buying property. Here's the student loan impact on economy. If people are paying their student loan debt, it's pretty basic. They're not buying houses, they're not drinking beer, they're not buying furniture because they're paying what? Their student loans. Okay? The only statistic that we see does go higher is if they got a degree, doctor, lawyer, or Indian chief, and so their incomes are higher. Okay? Here's ownership rates by age group. Okay? So 15 to 25 are very young ones, you know, only about 12% is homeowners, and it increases. Right now, you know, our 35 to 44, which is not our millennials, it's our Generation Y, it's the right Generation Y, are the ones that are buying the most. Okay? Then you go up a little bit higher, 45 to 54 years old, and 55 to 59. Okay? These are people that actually own their homes, but when they bought, I don't know that I have that statistic. So just because they own a home doesn't mean that they bought it during that year's old period, okay? But what I will tell you is that look at where our renters are going to come from, okay? I don't know about you, a lot of 15-year-olds still live at home, okay? Even 24-year-olds, they're in college or they live at home. So if I'm looking for a target market for rental property, I'm going to look from 25 to 34 years old, okay? That's our strongest rental market because they don't own houses. They live somewhere. This is Jonathan Smoke is one of the leading economists for Realtor.com. Okay, this came from him. Okay, and they Realtor.com, which is run by National Association of Realtors, says that the top projected market is Phoenix. Okay, I'm good with that. I like investing in Phoenix. Okay, and you can read this, but the They do believe Phoenix #1 market. Phoenix population change to single family ratio permit. Okay. The gap between 2013 and now, the gap between the population change and the homes being built was almost 200 basis points. Can somebody open that door? So that being said, 200 basis points is about 1.5% to 2%. I thought there was somebody there. So here's what I'm telling you. What does this even mean? One of my favorite comedians, by the way, but what does this even mean? It basically means that about 40% of the population are potential renters. And we simply have, it's simply a fact of supply and demand. If you can't get a house, you can't find what you want, you're going to rent. Do you agree? The average vacancy rate in Phoenix is less than 5%. Now this includes the vacancy rate for single, and we're talking single family right now, which believe it or not is about the same for multifamily. 5%, that includes from your Class A property, which is gorgeous, your Class B, which is average, your Class C. They don't take into account slum property, which is what we consider Class D. Okay? So it goes A through C, and you know, the different sectors have different demands. So 5%. 5% is an abnormal, just like it's an abnormal unemployment rate. Would you even want to rent to that 5% of the population? Maybe, maybe not. Probably not. Okay? So for our discussions when we talk about increasing rents and things like that, we really are working with really close to a 98% occupancy rate right now. And what's interesting, talk to any property manager. Do you have a vacancy in this building? If it's a well-run building, no, they don't. Often we're seeing waiting lists now on some of the multifamily. When we talk about the fourplex market, you know, statistically, and I mentioned this earlier, it's really kind of a blend of the single-family statistics and smaller fourplexes, smaller apartment buildings, things like that. Okay? So where's the market going? We know there's going to be a correction. There's always a correction. We don't know when, and I don't have a crystal ball, so don't ask me. Prices in fourplexes are steadily rising, and they've risen pretty steadily over the last 24 months. I watch the fourplex market on a daily basis. One of the first things I do when I get up in the morning is hit LoopNet and the MLS to see what new product has come to market. Okay? So here's what is the fourplex market doing right now. So this morning I pulled from the MLS. There's only 72 active fourplexes on the MLS. And of those 72, many of them are not even in the Phoenix area. Okay? And a lot of those, I wouldn't want one of my clients to buy because of either the location or the condition of the fourplexes. So when I went through the 72 this morning, I looked at them. There were only about 25 that I would even give a second look at. And since I'm one of the foremost experts on fourplexes, I'm going to tell you that's a pretty small market. Okay? The average price of a fourplex, and this is statistically, listing price is $275 right now. What I did do is take out the high and the low days on market because sometimes those are abnormal. The average market time for a fourplex today is 14 days. 14 days to snap up one if you want it, and many of them go much quicker. So I went to the solds in the last 6 months, again from the MLS, okay? 6 months ago today, so the 4th, 6 months ago, there's only been 125 fourplexes sold, okay? The average sale price in the last 6 months of fourplexes, and this is sale price, not listing price, is $254,000, okay? So the difference between the list price and the sale price is only about 4% statistically. So what these 125 fourplexes were listed at, okay, and their sale price from the MLS, there's only about a 4% difference. The average days on market for the fourplexes over the course of the last 6 months was 45 days. But this number is kind of skewed when you look at the MLS. Because if they go into escrow and it takes 30 days to get a loan, well, guess what? That's 30 days on market from the MLS, statistically what they believe. And that to me is not a real number, because maybe it was only on market again 14 days. Does that make sense? Okay. The days on market is calculated from the day it goes into the MLS to the day it closes. So during that period, you may have a loan that's being processed. So that's kind of a false number as far as I'm concerned. Okay? So what does this mean for fourplexes? It means it's a seller's market. It means that you're going to be buying on a lower cap rate. The lower the cap rate, the higher the price. The reason that we say this is that it's a seller's market is because you'll be, as an agent or a buyer, you'll be against multiple offers quite often. I have 2 fourplex contracts out right now, and I'm multiple offered on both of them. One of them they're accepting simply because of my reputation. He's bringing the contract by the office this afternoon. And the other one, pretty sure they'll accept my offer. You know what? I went in full price on both offers. The average closing cap rate on actual numbers is around 7%. So if your barometer is a 10% cap rate, don't look at fourplexes, because there are no 10% caps on fourplexes, no matter where you read it or what you see. When you want to buy a fourplex right now, you need to offer at or near full price. You will not get the contract. You can use your financing ability because interest rates are still really low. They're right now around 5% for a fourplex. Okay, so leverage. By the way, I've owned about 45 fourplexes, and it cost, I don't care how you want to do the numbers, it cost about $9,000 without your debt to run a fourplex yearly. Okay, that's the number. Somebody's going to call me and say, well, it cost me $10,000. Yeah, it might cost you $10,000. Someone's going to call me and say, I got it done for $8,000. I'm saying the average cost is $9,000 to run a fourplex for the year. I want to run over quickly the advantages of a fourplex. Number one, you're spreading your risk. What do I mean by that? You're spreading your tenant risk. If you have a single family house, people have heard me say this for years, and a tenant moves out, you've lost 100% of your income. If one tenant moves out of a fully occupied fourplex, you've only lost 25% of your income. You still have 75% to carry the expenses. You actually have better write-offs. Look at our webinar on our website, and if you've not registered on our website, you need to. But you have better write-offs because you have cost segregation that you can use on fourplexes, and you get the most cost segregation off of fourplexes versus single family because you get the most out of kitchens and bathrooms, and of course fourplexes better have more than a single family. Okay? We find that we have less tenant turnover, and here I am talking about from apartments. When you go to apartments, it's kind of a different mindset of tenants. Okay? And tenants don't move as often out of fourplexes statistically as they do from apartments. It's more like a home. They become really connected to their neighbors usually. They don't want to move. Okay? And the other thing, advantage of a fourplex, is that you can use residential financing. Please do not think this is a residential deal. Okay? I'm going to say that again. Do not think buying a fourplex should be a residential deal. It's residential financing. You need to treat it as an apartment purchase You need to do your due diligence like you would do on an apartment. And in a couple of weeks, I'll be doing a webinar on exactly what to do with fourplexes. Okay? So let's talk a little bit about apartment buildings. You notice I'm not pulling a lot of statistics on, pricing and things like that. And the reason I'm not is because we keep talking about job growth, population growth, and employment growth. What we do know here in the Phoenix market is that rents are going up. And we'll talk about that a little bit later, actually in this section. But I will tell you, rents are going up. Property managers are not as hesitant to raise rents because guess what? Where are they going to move? There's no place for them to move. So they'll take an increase in rent right now. Okay? So let's talk just for a second for future tenants for apartments. And now I'm talking a little bit larger, but a lot of this does still apply to fourplexes. It actually will filter down to single family as well. So from birth to 26 years, it's approximately 26 years of age that we start seeing people move into apartments. So what did we just talk about? Millennials, they're 26 years old right now. Okay? They are moving into apartments. What's funny with the millennials that I've experienced is that they're not as cost-driven for what a one-bedroom rents for as much as how cool it is to live there. Okay? So if it's a cool place to live, I've seen people getting $1.65 per square foot for studios. That's more than a Scottsdale Class A apartment, but it was cool, hip, and fun to live at. Okay? We do expect this group to decrease over the next 10 years. Why? Because they're going to get older, they're going to buy houses. And this group, marriage, has been increasing since the early 2000s by marriage. And when you get married and you have kids, not always, but typically you're looking for single family homes. You want to raise your kid in the home. Okay? So here we're talking about the multifamily rents. Okay? The third quarter of last year, remember we really don't have numbers in on the fourth quarter, but the third quarter of last year, rents were raised by approximately 2%. There has not been any decreases in rents in the Phoenix market since 2010. No decreases. One of the reasons that we didn't see decreases from 2010 is because a lot of people lost their houses and became renters. Okay? From 2010 until now, rents have increased approximately 12%. Okay, that's overall. So that's good news for landlords. Okay? And of course, when rents increase, we do know prices of buildings increase, and therefore that's why we've seen such of an increase in buildings. From 20, and again we're talking, because I could only find numbers from apartment vacancy rates here. From 2010 to present, vacancy rate has dropped over 10%. That's not to 10%, we've dropped down 10%. 2010 we were about 15% vacancy, and right now we're about 5% vacancy. And again, I feel that 5% is kind of a abnormal vacancy rate because again, do you want those tenants? They may have severe credit issues, eviction problems, felonies, whatever it is there. The current vacancy rate has basically remained at 5% since 2014. So that means if a tenant doesn't behave themselves, if a tenant doesn't pay their rent, if a tenant's a problem, and they get evicted, where do they go? Think about it. There's no place really for them to go. And the landlord's market are driving rent prices up. So the landlord has a market here just like the seller does. The landlord can set the rents, okay? And they're driving rents up, and that means door prices are going up. Door prices, the reason I say door prices, we refer to multifamily, how many doors are there? Are there 20 doors? That means 20 units. Are there 50 doors? That means 50 units. And so the vernacular is how many doors are there. Let's talk about apartment cap rates here. And I broke these out basically two ways. Fourplex closing rates, they're closing at approximately 6.9% cap rate. Okay? And these are closing rates. This is after you've scrubbed books and records and you really look at the books and records and understand and apply the correct numbers. Again, we'll go into that in the webinar the first part of February. Purchasing cap rates, and again, I'm talking closing cap rates, C properties, between 7 and 7.5% cap. That's about what apartments are closing at, okay? Now, here's the difference. If I buy a C property, which I personally like C property and like buying C property, I may have